Have a watch of this newly released clip of an IDF Arabic-speaking official calling a civilian in Gaza, telling him to leave because there's going to be an imminent strike, and the Gazan civilian point blank refusing to do so. It's extremely telling. Watch it and then we'll discuss.
لازم تطلع من البيت انت والأسرة وتبعدوا كمان نص كيلو. تمام؟ كم واحد معك؟ كم واحد معك في البيت؟
الأسرة كثير. في عندك
لازم يطلعوا كلهم. كم كثير؟
يعني 20 كل الأسرة.
كم عائلة؟
3 عائلات.
تمام. يحكي مع الإخوة. أنا بستنى لحد ما تطلعوا. ما في عندنا كثير واقف. تمام يا أبو يونس.
إحنا بعاد عن البنك.
اسمعني هذا خطير. يطلعوا من البيوت ويبعدوا كمان نص كيلو. كمان الختيارية وكمان الأطفال. هذا بعيد. القنبلة حتكون كبيرة.
يا حبيبي أنا بقدرش أطلع كل الناس هذول أنا بدي أقل شيء ساعتين عبال ما كلهم يطلعوا.
يا أخوي لو ما بتطلع أنا بطوح.
أنت طخ اللي بدك إياه سويه اللي بتنزل الأرض وتطلع.
واحد لازم يعمل كل شيء منشان ما تموت.
احنا بدنا
عندك مسؤولية على الأطفال.
بدنا نموت. كل الأطفال لازم يموتوا.
لا سمح الله بدك تستشهد
عشان تبين بشاعتكم. الله يلعنكم. اللي بترميه السما تتلقى الأرض. سووا اللي بدكم إياه. اسمع ما تقنعني. أنا ما بدي أطلع من البيت. اقصف البنك، اقصف الدار، اقصف اللي بدك إياه. سوي اللي بدك اياه.
يا ابو يونس ودك الاطفال يموتوا؟
انت خلص بدكاش الاطفال يموتوا ما تقصف البنك حيطان. شو قاعد تقصف حيطان؟
يا ابو يونس هذا مش بايدي. بقول لك صراحه مش بايدي. انا بايدي شيء واحد. انت حتعيش بسلام.
انا بدي
انت والاولاد.
السلام اللي من عندكم ما بدنا اياه. السلام اللي من عندكم ما بدنا اياه.
لو ما بتطلع من البيت هذا انتحار. هذا
حرام. اللي بدك اياه سويه.
حرام من القرآن.
انت بتعرف القرآن؟
يا
انت اصلا في القرآن ممنوع ملعون. سوي اللي بدك اياه حبيبي. اللي بدك اياه سويه. كله بده يموت عندنا. احنا عندنا الموت زي الحياة عندكم. الخير اللي منكم بدناش اياه. بلغ قيادة جيش الدفاع تبعتك انه ابو يونس ما بده يطلع من البيت. سووا اللي بدكم اياه واللي بترميه.
So there you have it. For anyone who up until this point was indulging in the notion that all the civilians in Gaza, they're entirely innocent, they're not complicit, and it's just Hamas. Hamas are the problem. Fine, deal with them. But don't let the civilians come into harm's way. There you have proof that the culture of death, the glorification of death, the demonization of the Jews, not just about Zionism, is it? There we go, he says it. It's in his Quran that tells him it's about the Jews who are cursed. It was never about a Jewish state. He clearly shows that this is not an issue just with the Hamas leadership. There is a probably majority support and sympathy for Hamas in Gaza. We know from recent polling done just last month that around 80% support the October 7th attack. And that's done in private polling where they're not facing any kind of intimidation. So this should bring us to ask some very serious questions. The fact that for him, life is so cheap. For this civilian, for this person who is prepared to sacrifice his children's life, his fellow community members' lives on the altar of trying to see Israel go, to kill the Jews. That's what it always was about, and that's what it comes down to right now as well for him. And so the questions that this poses to any objective, rational viewer should be this. Number one, is it really a case of a small minority in the Hamas government and the militants? They're the problem, but everyone else is innocent? Or actually, are many of the people there? Not all. Of course, there are going to be innocent people caught up. But is this a society that is riddled with hatred, with a love of terrorism and a culture of glorifying death, as long as it's to kill the enemy, to kill the Jews. So, aren't the lines much more blurry between civilian and Hamas terrorists? That's number one. Number two, what are the implications of that? When people say, well, you've got to keep providing aid because, yes, Hamas may get some of it, but there are so many innocent people caught up there. Is that really Israel's responsibility? Especially when so many of them are complicit, so many of them share the same agenda. You've had a generation that has been brainwashed in Hamas's perverted ideology. Now, it's very sad that this has happened, but it can't be our primary responsibility, the Jewish people's responsibility, to feed an enemy population that has become deeply poisoned with hate towards us at the expense of our own people. Just recently, IDF soldiers were killed by Hamas at the Kerem Shalom crossing into Gaza because they're allowing in aid. Is this something that we should continue to tolerate? Our approach to Nazi Germany, which only, by the way, won 44% of the German electorate, was to have an approach of, we're not going to supply you with anything. We're not going to call up your civilian population and tell them to move for an area. We're going to put ultimate military pressure on you until you surrender. And similarly, is it right, given this context, given that it's not really a people that's held hostage by its government, but actually it is a society that is complicit in what Hamas did, given all that, is it right that Israeli soldiers are having to be put up on the front lines so they can be more surgical in getting rid of Hamas, which risks them getting life-changing injuries or worse, death? Is that right? Is that moral? That we're allowing our people to be sacrificed on the altar of having a surgical approach to protect all the innocents out there? I'm not saying there aren't innocent people there. But given that what we've seen, that there is widespread support, why don't we just be clear that we are having a war against a nation? We are, just as we said in World War II, we're not having a fight against the Luftwaffe. We are fighting against Nazi Germany. We, the Jewish people, and Israel are fighting modern-day Nazi Gaza. Hamas-run Gaza. And no, it's not just the Hamas terrorists. As we posted in a recent video, an IDF soldier found that almost every home had weapons in it, laced with booby traps. I was just in southern Israel just last week. Went to see the sites of the atrocities and the horrors. And I went to one kibbutz Mefalsim, and they told us they had a Gazan there who was in his 70s, who they'd let and came to work every day since Israel's founding, since the kibbutz was set up decades and decades ago. They thought they had a lovely relationship with him. On October 6th, he left the kibbutz and left his phone there. Didn't show up on October 7th. Why did he leave his phone there? Because he didn't want to be tracked, because he betrayed them. Perhaps at gunpoint, but nevertheless, he betrayed them. Gave all the Hamas terrorist details of the kibbutz and where to attack. So many of the notions that we try and push out there and say, such as, no, we're being so surgical, look at our incredible ratio that's never before achieved of terrorist to civilian, and the world isn't interested. We say, look, we are allowing aid in, the world doesn't care. We say, look how targeted we are. We tell them in advance that we're gonna strike a certain area, and they want to have their children die. We try to dance to the Western standards of morality, and they don't even appreciate it anyway. They double down. And frankly, I think there's a message there, there's a divine message, that these standards of morality that we are dancing to are not moral. It's not moral to feed your enemy. It's not moral to let your people die and basically be held hostage as a nation in order to protect the enemy's civilians, who are the responsibility of their civilians and their government, not ours. The message is becoming clearer and clearer. Secular morality does not offer any wisdom, and that the way to fight should be guided by our Torah, not by the silly standards of secular morality, which actually don't even have an impact, don't impress the people in the West, and don't reflect the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is this is a people who are, by and large, complicit or supportive of what Hamas did and do. And yes, many of them, especially the children, who are always innocent, but they are brainwashed. And Israel's first responsibility is not to de-brainwash them, it's to protect her own people. To de-brainwash and de-radicalize another people, not our responsibility. It's the responsibility of the adults in Gaza to rise up and say, we don't want this, to tell their leaders to surrender, to cease fire. It is not our responsibility to sacrifice our own people and to sabotage our own progress in order to protect an enemy society. Praying for peace, praying for security, and praying also for truth. I'm Ollie Annisfeld and you're watching JTV. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.